9738.
You're like this.
I think. Okay. Hey, I'm just gonna run through these real quick for those watching at home, on the TV. So we said, who doesn't watch this? Are you kidding me? I got a pretty large following.
I know Josh is
All right, listen up here.
He's the new people.
These all came out the same as Mr. Schlur said, or you saw a common pattern. That's going to be you're going to see that occur here today. And there's a reason we're going to do that. We are about 3 weeks away, I think, from the state test. And we're in pretty good shape, just kind of the timing. We'll get done with the material we need to cover, and then we're going to hit a little bit of review. But these next 2 or 3 weeks are real important in terms of the content. It tends to show up a good bit on the test. Quite honestly, the better you do on the first time, when you hit this test, the better off you're going to be later on. Okay, so just take these as serious as you can, and just do your best. That's all you got to do. Pay attention in here. That's the number one thing you need to do. Just pay attention in class. What do we get for this one? X plus 5 times x plus 5, and we said that was x plus 5 squared. And then we said this was x minus 3 times x minus 3, which we wrote as x minus 3 squared, and x minus 7 times x minus 7, x minus 7 squared. Okay, for that one. All right, so you see the similarities. We're going to do something called completing the square. We learned how to solve quadratics by factoring, and we did a little bit of square roots, but those are kind of dependent upon the equation given. This one will work for anything. Let me see. We got one of those. So please follow along. Okay. This is a little bit, the method of completing the square ends up giving you something that is x plus 3 quantity squared, or something squared. So if you have something x squared plus 6, I'm going to show you how to figure out the number that will guarantee it factors into something squared. That's kind of the main part that we're going to look at. And this method is called completing the square. All right, now this is that first one there. It says complete the square for the expression. Write the resulting expression as a binomial square. All right, what number, any ideas here, what number could I put here that will allow me to factor this into the same two numbers that multiply together to give that number and adds to 20? What'd you say? 100. He says 100. All right, he's right. Put a 100 right there. Put a 100 right there. Now, that factors into what? Now, that's the first part. It says complete this. That is the completing the square part. Now we got to write it as a binomial square. What does that factor into? It factors into x plus 10 times x plus 10. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 plus 10 is 20. X plus 10 squared. Okay, it's going to look like that. Now, a few of you will just be able to look at it and figure that out. That's good. But not everybody can. So let's come up with a backup plan. Here's your backup plan. What you do is you take whatever this number is with the x, you cut it in half. All right? So I take that number, 20, and I cut it in half to 10, and then you square that number. That's how you get the 100. That'll always work. Like I said, some of you just be able to kind of mentally do it. If you can, great. But if not, we need to come up with a couple steps. So what we're going to do here, we got to figure out that number. Okay, Sam?
36.
She says 36. Take negative 12, take the sign with it, divide it in half, and then square it. Well, negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 squared, don't forget, is positive 36. This number will always be a plus. Now it says to factor it. So we factor it into x minus 6 times x minus 6, which is x minus 6 squared.
We're using here the standard form, which again is ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, for right now, basically we're finding c, okay? And to find c, we use b. B is the letter, B is the number that's in front of the x. You're just splitting that in half and squaring it every single time, okay? It'll get a little bit more complex later when we add in another value for c. Right now, that's all we're doing is finding c and how we can make it something easy like in the bell work.
All right, on this third one, Grant's stuck on this third one. We're gonna help him out. Well, I'm not gonna call anybody out. So no. All right. What number goes there? Anybody know? We got Jason.
Is it 1?
It is 1. You're amazing. It is a 1. Now here's, because sometimes this throws you off. 2 divided by 2. Take this 2, cut it in half. Well, what's 2 divided by 2? It's 1. And then you square it. So it gives me 1 squared, which is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Now make sure you put a 1 there because there's a tendency to want to make it a 2. All right, what does this factor into? This factors into, I need 2 numbers that multiply to 1 and add to get 2. They're both going to be 1s. X plus 1 times x plus 1. So you get x plus 1 squared. All right, so that is called completing the square. This is going to help us solve these equations. Okay, eventually. But you got to know how to do this step here. So like I said, this tells you how to do it. Whatever the number is in front of the x, Mr. Schluter said that's a b. If it's a 6, you cut it in half. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Always works for what we want. All right, I can't remember if this is on there or not. Is that? Okay, we're kind of backtracking for a second. We're backtracking. This is from the last section. How did we solve x squared equals 16? Don't make it hard. Say that again? No, because there's no 2. We don't divide by 2. Don't need to do that. Something else.
Getting multiplied by 2.
Joe?
You gotta find the square root.
Square root. You take the square root. If you just got x squared equals a number, but one thing you got to do on this side is you got to make it plus or minus square root of 16. Well, the square root of 16 is what? 4. Grant knows that. Plus or minus 4. Ooh, yeah, don't forget. Change that. Erase that. Erase that. We're going to combine what we just did with what we did last week. So I'm kind of doing 2 different things here. So I'll hopefully merge it all together. But right there, so x equals plus or minus 4. For x squared equals 9, take the square root of both sides. Square root of x squared equals plus or minus square root of 9. X equals plus or minus 3. All right, so this is what we've done before. Yeah, you probably need a little bit of something to jog your memory. That's fine, but that's all we're doing here. And that's just if you have an x squared. All right, number 3 looks a little different, doesn't it? Okay, this is actually okay. If I got something squared equals a number, I can just take the square root of both sides. Okay? Before, it was just x squared. It was a little bit easier. But if I got something squared equals 16, go ahead, underneath this, write the square root of x plus 1 squared equals plus or minus the square root of 16. The square root of x squared is x. All right, what do you think the square root of x plus 1 squared is? On that left side, any ideas what that will be? Okay.
Just x plus 1.
Just x plus 1, good. Just x 1. So for this side, put x plus 1 equals the square root of 16 is 4. It's going to be plus or minus 4. I'm not done. Because you got to say tell me what x equals. Okay, it's got to be. So we do what we normally do. If you had x plus 1 equals something, you got to subtract 1. So subtract 1 on both sides. All right, now here's how you write this. Write this. I'm going to put the -1 first. I'm going to make it -1 plus or minus 4. It's actually telling me to do two things. It's saying take -1 and then add 4 to it. And it's saying take -1 and subtract 4. Well, what's -1 plus 4? Okay, it's not a trick question. -1 plus 4 is 3. What's -1 minus 4?
5. -5.
-5. So now, so that's -1 plus 4. And not that you have to write this down, but I'm just trying to give you where it's coming from. -1 minus 4. Hey, this is a real easy one to check. What's 3 plus 1? Go throw this up in the top. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 squared is? Be careful. -5 plus 1 is -4. -4 squared is also what? 16. Okay, it's also 16. All right. Same idea on number 4. If you think you know what you're doing, try it. If you're not sure yet, just wait. If you think you know what you're doing, try it. Jalen, put your phone back.
Wait, which side?
Yeah. Yes. You jumped way too far. Slow it down.
Please come with calculation.
Okay. Okay.
And he's already.
I gave you some time there, Joe. Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
You got it. Now here's how you can do it. What's 8 minus 5? 3 squared is plus 2 minus 5. All right, Chris, now how are we going to all right, let's go ahead and do this. First step down, let's put up there. You all right?
Yeah. X equals 5.
All right, yeah. Should be, that's a all right, you take the square root of both sides. And so x minus 5 squared is going to give you x minus 5 plus or minus 3. All right, one thing you got to watch, since it's x minus 5, what do you got to do to move the 5 over? You got to do plus 5. And I think it's easier if you put the positive 5 first, and then you do the plus or minus after that. Technically, you can get the same answer, but I just think this is easier. 5 plus 3 is 8. 5 minus 3 is 2. They're both positive. Yes, you can write the 2 first, and actually I probably prefer that, but I just went in order. As long as you have those 2 answers, you're okay. So 2, 8, or 8, 2, they're fine. And this is one you can check, because 8 minus 5 is 3. 3 squared gives me 9. And then 2 minus 5 is -3. -3 squared is 9. All right, so now we're going to kind of merge the two things together here. X squared equals 16, taking the square root. So if you flip it over on the back. Okay. All right, now, actually, you got that information. I'm going to do a problem and then come back to all that. I think it's going to be a little bit easier. So, hey, you don't need all that. Where'd that come from? Oh, okay. All right, is this a problem you got? I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Here's what we need to do. And don't write anything down yet. We need to somehow make this into x plus, and I'm going to make up a number, x plus something squared equals another number. This is what we got to do. We got to take this and make it into this. All right? How do I do that? I need to go back to the very first thing we did. Let me do this. Don't you? And I got to figure out a number that will create something square. Okay? And so do this first step for me. That negative 15 is going to stay over there. I'm going to have you write x squared plus 16x. I want you to put a plus. I want to put a space, put a blank. And if you remember for equations, if I do something on one side, I got to do the exact same thing on the other. So if I add something into the left side, I got to add the same thing on the right side. So I'm going to put another space on the right-hand side. So I got x squared plus 16x plus this blank. Now I need to put a number in there that will make that factor into something squared. This is what we did on the front. We did that little procedure. We took this number and we cut it in what? Half, and then do what? Square it. So I'm going to do this. So underneath here, write x squared plus 16x plus, all right, do this for me. Do 16 divided by 2 squared. Do that. That's always going to work. Equals negative 15 plus 16 divided by 2 squared. A few of you will be able to kind of do this mentally and figure out what that number is. That's fine. Most of us will have to take this extra step. All right, what is 16 divided by 2 squared? Column. 64. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this x squared plus 16x plus 64 equals negative 15 plus 64. Okay. What does that factor into? What are two numbers that multiply to 64, add to 16? 8. 8 and 8. So this is going to factor into, and I'm just going to write it in one step, x plus 8 squared. What's negative 15 plus 64? That is 49. Okay, now we are now back to the problem we had on the other side. See where we're at? We got something squared equals a number. So what do we do to both sides? Take the square root. Take the square root. So I got the square root of x plus 8 squared equals plus or minus the square root of 49. And that gives me x plus 8 equals plus or minus 7. I got to move over here. I ran out of room. Subtract 8. I get x equals negative 8 plus or minus 7. And give me those two answers. Use your calculator. It's fine. Negative 8 plus 7. Negative 1. Negative 8 minus 7. Negative 15. Okay. So we're merging those two things. We're merging, just finding that number that goes in that spot that gives me something, quantity squared, and then we're merging into how to take the square root of both sides. All right, I'm going to go back to this now. Okay. This gives us the steps to find this that we just went through. Collect all the variable terms on one side. That means anything with an x on one side and all the constants on the other. Well, we already did that for you. Here's one thing that won't come up today, but it will come up later. You cannot have a number in front of x squared. Like if there's a 2 or a 3 there, we got to get rid of that. But it's not going to come up today. Complete the square, which means find that number that goes to both sides. And then once that, we take the square root. I like to do that example first. I think it makes this make more sense when you read through it. So part B, let's see if we can do this whole thing. You want the constant over there. It's already over there. Okay. So what if you have that? Is that the one next to it or below? All right, so it's next to it. So now do this. Do x squared minus 12x. And then we're going to put in a blank on both sides. Okay. What goes in that blank? Okay. Do you know? I guess let me ask that. Joe?
3, 4.
I know.
Okay.
I was thinking 4 and 5.
Now think of that procedure we just did. Okay, Tommy, do you know how to figure out what number goes there?
No.
No? All right, let's go back here. That number, take the b value. Take whatever the b value is, cut it in half, and then square it. So this is what it's telling you to do. So now our b value is negative 12, and I'm going to do this right here. Do negative 12 divided by 2, and we're going to square it. Negative 12 divided by 2, and then we're going to square it. Well, negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. When you square it, it automatically becomes a positive. So, Evan, what number goes there when we're done? What's negative 12 divided by 2? What's negative 6 squared? Positive 36. So that number is going to be a positive 36. And so I'm going to make both of those a 36. Now, if we've done everything right, now I'm not going to do this every time, but I'm going to put it over here. X squared minus 12x plus 36. It's got to be the same two numbers. X minus 6 times x minus 6. X minus 6 squared. If you need to do that extra step, fine. I'm just going to jump to x minus 6 squared equals, what's negative 20 plus 36? 16. So we got it where we need it. We got something squared equals a number. Morgan, you know what to do now? Yes. Take the square root of both sides. Okay. Square root x minus 6 squared equals plus or minus square root of 16. All right, if you know what you're doing, finish. If you're not, just I'll wait and I'll go through it. If you really know what you're doing, check your answer. Check the two answers you get. Just by plugging them in at the top.
There's no way.
We'll get you there, Joe. We'll get you there.
Tomorrow, back in school. Sleeping all last week.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody was up at this time at all last week. What time?
Yeah.
What time is it right now? 9:08. I woke up yesterday at 8:45.
Oh, did you?
I was in Texas.
You're in Texas? You have family down there, or you just?
Yeah, my sister.
Okay, what's she doing now?
No, she just lives down there.
This is down there?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right, so when you take the square root, you get x minus 6 equals plus or minus 4. Make sure you add 6. and I get positive 6 plus or minus 4. So my two answers are 6 plus 4, which is 10, and 6 minus 4, which is 2. 6 plus 4 is 10. 6 minus 4 is 2. All right. So like I said, we're merging these two steps together. We got to find something that will factor into quantity squared, and then when we get that, we are solving it like we did on the front. All right. The third one there. Okay. Try it. Try it. If you're not sure, wait. Let's see if you can put everything together.
What's that?
That's your little rate down there.
That's a -12.
That's a rate of 12 or?
That's a -12. And like this, -12 divided by 2. We'll make you write it down so if you can follow it.
So this is the
So it's -12 divided by 2 in parentheses. And then square it.
So like,
That is this step right there.
B divided by
That's step 3. That's 3.
so it's 10 divided by 2. No, 5 squared.
What are you doing? No.
All right, I got the first step down there. If you're a little stuck.
So now I'm at. So this is gonna become. This needs to be x plus e squared.
Oh, look at that.
Yes. So it's x plus 5 x plus 5 squared. Negative.
That's not.
Is.
I need
This step.
Why is it?
Okay, what's 10 divided by 2? Have that thing out.
But just
Yeah.
Now you get the hang of it? All right, you get it. Now what I got there. X squared. Okay, now we gotta add something to All right, now we're finished. Right.
Okay.
All right. What's your
I don't like minus 7 plus 6.
Okay, so this becomes x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 16. I'm gonna take the extra step that I think confuses a few of you. To factor this, it's x plus 5 times x plus 5. Okay, it's that, x plus 5 times x plus 5. But sometimes I jump ahead and I just make it, but you gotta make it x plus 5 squared equals 16. Now at this point here, once you, all right, let me slow down. Okay, let you get caught up with your catching up. Once you get there, what do you have to do to both sides? You take the square root. And sometimes I think you try to do two, you can get lost by doing too many steps at once. When I take the square root, put plus or minus square root of 16. Square root of x plus 5 squared is just x plus 5. Don't forget the square root of 16 is 4. And so I subtract 5. I get negative 5 plus or minus 4. Negative 5 plus 4. Negative 1. Negative 5 minus 4. Negative 9. Okay, negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. All right, this is one where you definitely need to use your notes. Like, don't put your notes away. You will forget it. Now, what I'm going to do for this one, it's going to be
Can't say it. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to give you a ton, but I want what I give you, I want you to do 1 through 11 odd.
Wow. As he said, D is
Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2.
Okay, 1 through 11 odd. 1 through 11 odd.
I gotta talk about
It's not.